So we're diving into something I know you've been really thinking about a lot.
Yeah.
And that's this whole red pill thing,
Right.
especially like how it connects to marriage.
Yeah.
All those like hidden contracts and relationships.
Absolutely.
It's like you're trying to figure out the rule book.
Mm-hmm.
Even the rules that like nobody talks about.
Yeah, those unspoken agreements.
Right, exactly.
The hidden dynamics of power.
And expectation.
What?
So to really get into this,
Okay.
we're going to look at this book
All right.
by Conrad Riker.
Okay.
It's called The Corrosive Impact of Cultural Marxism, a Critical Analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that title might sound a bit intense.
Yeah.
But Riker actually calls this book like edutainment.
Okay.
But he does say it's accurate.
Interesting.
And he covers a ton of different topics.
Yeah, like what?
He goes into critical theory,
Uh-huh.
postmodernism,
Okay.
gender roles,
Right.
the family unit,
Gotcha.
all through the lens of cultural Marxism, which he sees as like this powerful force shaping Western civilization.
He's not a fan, it sounds like.
No, he's very critical.
Interesting.
In the preface, he even calls it insidious.
Wow.
So that right there, that really connects with this whole red pill idea
I see that.
of like uncovering hidden agendas,
Absolutely.
questioning the narratives we're given.
Right, especially when it comes to things like gender roles.
And how institutions like marriage have evolved.
Exactly.
So before we get too far,
Okay.
we need to define what Riker actually means by cultural Marxism.
Makes sense.
He traces it back to this group called the Frankfurt School.
Okay.
They were intellectuals back in the early 20th century.
All right.
And they were really interested in how culture shapes us.
Okay.
Like how media,
Yeah.
education,
Yeah.
even art,
Interesting.
all of that shapes our thinking and behavior.
So it's not just about like economic systems.
Yeah.
It's about the ideas behind everything.
Right. The ideas that permeate our culture.
Yeah, I get it.
And they believed that if you change the culture,
Okay.
you can fundamentally transform society.
That's interesting.
And this is where that idea of the long march through the institutions comes in.
Okay, I've heard that term.
It's about this gradual, long-term strategy
Okay.
to shift society's values and norms over generations.
So like slowly changing the rules of the game.
Exactly. And that could be seen as creating like this new unspoken agreement.
Like a covert contract,
Yeah.
replacing the old ways of doing things.
Precisely.
Wow, that
And this is exactly how Riker connects it to the red pill.
makes sense.
He argues that this long march has had a huge impact.
Okay, like on what specifically?
Well, he talks about the family structure,
Yeah.
education, even how we perceive masculinity today.
Yeah, I can see how that would be relevant.
So let's start with the family.
Okay.
Riker really goes deep on what he sees as the breakdown of the traditional family unit.
Okay.
He links it to the rise of feminism, things like no-fault divorce, and the increase in single motherhood.
So he sees those as connected.
Yeah, in his view, they all stem from this cultural Marxist influence.
That's definitely a controversial take.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm curious to hear more about how he ties it all together.
Well, it all goes back to those covert contracts.
All right. Those unspoken agreements.
Exactly.
So how does that apply to the family?
Because if traditional roles and expectations within marriage are disrupted,
Okay.
it's like the agreed upon terms are being rewritten.
Interesting.
And maybe not everyone's fully aware of it.
Yeah, like the rules are changing, but no one's saying that out loud.
Right. And that's the core of his argument.
Okay.
That these shifts have happened gradually, almost insidiously,
Yeah, like under the radar.
impacting the very fabric of society.
So it's not just about individual families.
No, he's talking about like a societal level change.
Wow.
Then there's education.
Okay.
Riker believes that education has become less about actual learning
Okay.
and more about pushing a specific agenda, one that he sees as undermining traditional values.
So he thinks there's like a hidden curriculum.
Yeah, he presents a pretty strong case
Okay.
that education, especially in recent decades,
Huh?
has become this battleground for ideological influence.
I can see how that would be seen as a kind of covert contract.
Right.
Like the way things are taught is shaping how students think.
Exactly.
Without them necessarily realizing it.
Like the curriculum and the teaching methods are subtly shaping how students see the world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that actually connects to another big theme in the book,
What's that?
identity politics.
Okay.
Roker is very critical of identity politics. He sees it as inherently divisive.
So how does he explain that?
He says that instead of focusing on what unites us,
Okay.
identity politics emphasizes our differences, which can lead to more conflict.
Yeah, I can see that.
He even used the example of that Google engineer.
Oh yeah, James Damore.
Yeah.
The one who was fired
Right.
after he wrote that memo.
About diversity policies at Google.
Right.
Riker uses this example to show how challenging certain narratives,
Okay.
even if you think you're just expressing your opinion,
Yeah.
can have some serious consequences.
It's like getting fired.
Exactly.
So it's like there are these unspoken rules
Yeah.
about what you can and can't say.
Right.
Even what you can and can't think.
And if you step outside of those boundaries,
This is going to be backlash.
exactly, and that leads directly into his concerns about free speech.
All right, I'm curious to hear what he has to say about that.
Well, Riker argues that the ability to express dissenting views,
Okay.
especially views that challenge the main narrative.
Yeah.
That ability is being eroded. Like people are being silenced.
It's like that saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
Right.
And he connects this to the media as well.
Okay, how so?
He argues that media bias and the way algorithms control what we see online, they create these echo chambers where we're only exposed to certain viewpoints, and that limits our exposure to different perspectives.
It's like we're being subtly steered towards certain ways of thinking.
Which again kind of ties back to that idea of a covert contract.
Right.
It's like we're agreeing to a certain worldview.
Without even realizing it.
That's a scary thought.
It is. And to really understand Riker's full argument, we need to grapple with another concept.
What's that?
Postmodernism.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this one can be a bit tricky.
I know, it's a whole philosophy.
It is.
That can be hard to wrap your head around.
But essentially it challenges the idea of one single objective truth.
Okay, so like instead of saying this is the truth, modernism says, well, that might be your truth.
Exactly.
But here's my truth, and they're both equally valid.
Yeah, and that can be really frustrating.
You can imagine, especially if you're looking for a clear-cut answer.
Like many people in the red pill community are.
Right, they want to know what's real.
Exactly. And this can feel like the rug is constantly being pulled out from under you.
Yeah, no stable ground.
And Riker argues that this sense of uncertainty and confusion, that's created by postmodern thinking.
Yeah.
It actually plays right into the hands of cultural Marxism.
So he's saying it makes people more vulnerable.
Yeah, like by questioning objective truth, it becomes easier to manipulate people.
Interesting.
Present narratives that serve specific agendas.
And he sees that as a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
So we've got this cultural Marxism thing, which Riker sees as this driving force behind major societal shifts, affecting everything from the family to education to free speech
to how we perceive reality.
That's a lot to take in.
It is a lot, and we're just scratching the surface here.
Right.
There's so much more to unpack.
I'm already feeling like I need to process all of this.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
But I'm definitely intrigued.
Good, because we're just getting started with this deep dive.
I'm ready for more.
There's so much more to explore in Riker's analysis.
Looking forward to it. It's like Riker connects cultural Marxism to how we see gender now.
Yeah.
He says it's gone way beyond just equality. Now it's about redefining what it even means to be male or female.
Blurring those traditional lines.
Exactly.
He really dives into the transgender movement, and he sees it as a direct outcome of this cultural Marxist to get rid of traditional categories and hierarchies.
Like those old ways of thinking just don't fit anymore.
Right. It's like he's saying those understandings of male and female, they're being intentionally deconstructed.
That's a strong statement.
It is. And he even suggests that all these antidepressants that people are using, that's like a symptom of this societal upheaval. Like people are struggling to adapt.
The logic.
Yeah. To a world where the old rules don't apply anymore.
I can see that.
It's like this feeling of unease. Things are changing too fast.
Yeah.
And all those traditional anchors of identity, they're gone.
So you feel lost.
Right. And I can see how that connects with the red pill perspective.
I can too.
That feeling of being disoriented.
Like the world shifted under your feet.
Exactly. And Riker, he doesn't hold back on feminism either.
What does he say about that?
He sees it as a movement that's going off the rails. Humanizing masculinity, contributing to the breakdown of the family.
And he links that back to covert contracts too.
Oh yeah. He suggests that feminism has basically rewritten the contract.
Between men and women.
Exactly. And not always for the better for both sides.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, because on one hand, there's this push for equality, which is good.
Yeah.
But Riker argues that dismantling those traditional roles and expectations, it's led to confusion and resentment.
Yeah, like the rules changed, but no one told us the new ones.
Exactly. And everyone's just trying to figure it out.
I think that's where his work might resonate with a lot of people, especially those in the red pill community.
Because if you're feeling like the ground has shifted
and those unspoken agreements are gone, Riker's perspective might help make sense of those feelings.
He's saying, hey, you're not crazy. These changes are happening. And they're having a real impact on men.
Yeah, that's a powerful message.
It is. And he's particularly concerned about men and boys. He argues that they're being marginalized, even demonized in this new culture. He sees those traditional virtues of masculinity.
Like what?
Strength, stoicism, assertiveness. He says they're being reframed as toxic and oppressive.
Wow. So it's like a complete flip.
It is. And he connects this to a bunch of issues.
Like what?
The decline of fatherhood, the rise in male suicide rates. He argues that men are being left behind in this whole cultural shift.
He brings up education too, right?
Oh yeah. He suggests that schools They're actually undermining boys' development
Interesting.
by promoting a feminist agenda that doesn't value their strength.
Yeah, so he thinks boys are being disadvantaged.
Yeah, and it's a pretty harsh assessment.
I can see that.
But I can also see how it would appeal to people who feel like men are being unfairly targeted.
Yeah, blamed for society's problems.
Right, and he even connects this to the prevalence of antidepressants.
Oh, wow.
Suggesting it's not just individual factors.
But like a societal problem.
Yeah, a sense of unease stemming from all these changes.
That's a pretty big claim.
It is. So we've talked about how Riker sees these shifts impacting families, education, masculinity.
Yeah.
But he also makes this really important point.
What's that?
About how ideologies actually work.
Okay.
He says they operate on a subconscious level.
We don't even realize they're affecting us.
Exactly. It's like that analogy of the fish not knowing it's in water.
Right.
Riker says that cultural Marxism is so powerful because it shapes our thoughts and beliefs.
Without us even knowing it.
Exactly.
That's a scary thought.
It's about becoming aware of those underlying currents, those unspoken assumptions that shape how we see the world.
So it's like waking up from a dream and realizing the world isn't what you thought it was.
Exactly. And that can be both empowering and unsettling.
How so?
Because on one hand, you realize you have the power to choose how you respond to these forces, but it can also feel like you're fighting an uphill battle.
Against these really ingrained ideas.
Right. It's like you've seen the Matrix.
You know what's going on.
But now you have to figure out what to do about it.
That's a tough spot to be in.
And that's where Riker's call to action comes in.
Okay. What does he say we should do?
He doesn't want us to just sit back and watch.
Right.
He wants us to actively push back.
Against cultural Marxism.
Yeah. He wants us to fight against what he sees as its harmful influence.
So what does that look like?
He encourages his readers to educate themselves, to speak up, to challenge the narratives they see in the media.
Even in their own family.
Yeah, everywhere.
That's a big ask.
It's like he's saying, don't let them control the conversation.
Okay.
Engage debate and stand up for what you believe in.
That's a powerful message.
And I think that message of taking control really resonates with the red pill community.
They're already questioning the status quo.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that Riker's perspective is just that.
A perspective.
Yeah. It's one way of looking at things.
Right.
It's not the only way.
And not necessarily the right way.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing here.
Okay.
Diving into these ideas, examining them critically.
Help the listener form their own conclusions.
Exactly.
I like that approach.
So as you're listening to Riker's argument, ask yourself,
what
rings true for me?
Okay.
What do I agree with?
Yeah.
What do I disagree with?
That's good advice.
It's about developing critical thinking skills, learning to see through any ideology.
No matter how persuasive it might seem. So one thing Riker keeps coming back to is how this cultural Marxism is affecting how we all get along.
Social cohesion.
Right. Like he's saying it's actually getting harder to connect with each other, to find like a shared purpose.
Because of all this.
Exactly. Like we're being pulled apart.
Instead of brought together.
Right. And he thinks it's because we're focusing so much on identity politics.
Yeah, it's us versus them all the time.
Right. And it's definitely a bleak picture.
It is.
But I can see why some people would relate to that.
Yeah, especially in the red pill community.
Where there's that feeling of alienation.
Right, like society's falling apart.
Exactly. And Riker points to how polarized we are now.
Everyone's on one side or the other.
And it's like this constant battle.
It's like we can't even agree on the basics anymore.
It's like all those unspoken agreements.
Covert contracts.
Yeah, the things that used to hold us together.
Gone.
And now it's just suspicion and division.
It's a scary thought.
It is. And Riker thinks it's deliberate.
What do you mean?
He says cultural Marxism needs conflict.
To survive.
To thrive. Yeah, because it's easier to control people.
When they're fighting each other.
Exactly. Divided, we fall.
It's like he's saying our differences are being used against us.
To keep us at each other's throats.
And he's especially worried about men.
Yeah. What does he say?
He says men are being told their roles don't matter anymore.
Like they're not needed.
Right. And that masculinity itself is toxic. Which, for someone who believes in the red pill, that just confirms their suspicion.
That there's a plan to get rid of masculinity.
Exactly. And Riker suggests that this feeling of alienation, it contributes to all these problems.
Like what?
The rising male suicide rates.
Oh, wow.
The decline in men going to college.
Okay.
Men dropping out of the workforce.
He's painting a pretty bleak picture.
He is. It's like men are being told they're expendable.
And that can lead to hopelessness.
Right. And he says this message is everywhere.
Like where?
In the media, education, culture.
Constant attack.
Yeah, it's chipping away at men's sense of purpose.
And their place in society.
So if Riker's right, and this cultural Marxism is really controlling everything,
what can we do about it?
That's the big question.
There's no way out.
Well, Riker has a few suggestions.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, he says education is crucial. Like, we need to understand how this ideology works.
How it affects us.
Right, how it influences our thoughts and beliefs.
Even when we don't realize it.
Exactly. It's about exposing those covert contracts.
Right.
Becoming aware of those unspoken agreements.
They control our world.
Yeah. Because once you understand how something works,
You can fight it.
exactly, you're not just blindly reacting.
And he can control.
And he also says we need to be more critical
Of what?
of the information we're consuming.
Okay, like the news.
Yeah, the media in general.
So question everything.
Question the narrative.
And look for other viewpoints.
Yeah, don't just accept what you're being told.
Think for yourself.
Exactly. Do your own research.
Break free from those echo chambers.
It's about taking control of your own information.
Don't be a passive consumer.
Be an active participant.
I like that.
And finally, Riker says,
Yeah.
we need to get back to those traditional values.
The ones that have been lost.
Right, the ones he thinks cultural Marxism has undermined.
So like what?
Things like family,
Okay.
faith, hard work,
All right.
personal responsibility.
The basics.
Yeah, the values he believes built a strong society.
So even though Riker's book,
Yeah.
it's pretty intense.
It is.
And some might say controversial.
Definitely.
It does make you think
It really does.
about what's happening in the world
And the choices we have.
as individuals.
Exactly. And whether you agree with him or not,
Yeah.
it's a book that makes you question things. It challenges you to see the world differently.
To think about the changes happening around us.
And whether those changes are good or bad.
That's a really important question.
It's a call to awareness.
Okay.
A call to action
And a call to take back our power.
as individuals.
I like that.
And if you're interested in learning more,
Yeah.
you can find Riker's book,
Okay. What's it called again?
The Corrosive Impact of Cultural Marxism, a critical analysis.
Okay.
It's on Amazon Kindle
All right.
and Google Play Books.
I'll check it out.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what are your main takeaways?
That's a good question.
What really resonated with you?
Yeah.
What challenged your thinking?
I think.
How does all this connect with your own experience?
Yeah.
Especially the things that led you to the red pill.
Because that's what these deep dives are all about.
Exactly.
To get you thinking
To
critically.
give you the tools to navigate this crazy world.
We're not here to tell you what to believe.
Right.
We're here to help you figure it out for yourself.
And that's something no one can take away from you.
Your ability to think for yourself.
Exactly. So until next time,
Okay.
keep questioning
Keep exploring.
and keep diving deep.